Welcome to the Rewrite Your Life Story podcast, hosted by your favourite duo, Stephen and Charlene. They're here to help you transform your mindset and create a positive outlook on life. Are you tired of feeling stuck and unfulfilled? Are you ready to take control of your thoughts and emotions and rewrite your story? Well, you're in the right place. They will be sharing inspiring stories, practical tips, and expert advice to help you on your journey to a better you. You'll learn how to let go of negative self-talk, embrace your strengths, and focus on the good things in life. Each episode will be joined by amazing guests who have rewritten their own life stories and are now living their best lives. From successful entrepreneurs to accomplished athletes, we'll bring you stories of resilience, courage, and triumph. So grab a cup of coffee, get cozy, and get ready to be inspired. Tune in every week for a new episode of the Rewrite Your Life Story podcast. Let's rewrite our stories together and make every day count.
In this episode, we interview Liam Naden, who shares his personal story of trying various methods to achieve success, only to experience a significant setback that led to homelessness in his mid-40s. Through the process of rebuilding his life, Liam discovered a crucial insight into creating an ideal life, harnessing the power of the mind in the most effective way possible. Join us as we delve into his story.
Before we get started, we want to remind you that the information presented in this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. The views and opinions expressed by the hosts and their guests are their own and do not represent the views of any organisation or entity. Additionally, any information presented should not be taken as legal, medical, or financial advice. Always consult with a licensed professional in the respective field for any advice or guidance. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's dive into today's topic and learn how to transform our lives through positive thinking and taking control of our stories. Thanks for joining us.
Before we begin, we want to give you a heads up. We may be discussing some sensitive and personal topics that might bring up some strong emotions or discomfort. Our goal is to create a safe and supportive space, but we know that everyone's experiences and triggers are different. If you start feeling overwhelmed or triggered during an episode, remember to prioritize your well-being. It's totally okay to hit pause and take a break. Your self-care is important, and looking after your mental and emotional health should always come first. If you ever need extra support, we encourage you to reach out to a mental health professional or someone you trust. You're not alone, and there are resources available to help you on your personal journey. Thank you for joining us on this incredible ride with the Rewrite Your Life Story podcast. Together we'll navigate life's challenges and rewrite our narratives with strength and resilience.
Hey everyone, it's Stephen and Charlene from the Rewrite Your Life Story podcast, and today we have Liam Naden, who is originally from Auckland, New Zealand, and I'm really excited about interviewing Liam because you're actually our first Kiwi to be on the show. So welcome to the show. But you're traveling Europe in a motor van at the moment.
How exciting.
So that is just awesome. How are you, Liam?
I'm great, thanks. And really nice to meet you guys. Thanks very much for having me on your show.
Awesome. Now, Liam, you have an interesting story with many facets, many ways you have rewritten your story. But take us to your upbringing, to the change that when you were 40s. Tell us everything.
Well, hopefully not everything, but I guess what's probably of interest to your listeners is how do you go from a life where you're really struggling to succeed and trying to figure out the way to be the best version of yourself that you can until you finally achieve a breakthrough and realize what you've missed through all the struggle and all of the effort and things that you've been really trying all your life. And because I guess a lot of people you meet, a lot of people I meet, they're stuck and they really don't want to be stuck. But, you know, from as early as I can remember, I was always about how can I be happy and successful and be the best? I always wanted to be the best at everything. And the first place I learnt or was taught how to be your best or how to be happy and get everything that you want in your life was through religion, because I was brought up in a religious family in my childhood. And my parents, my teachers, the priests, all the religious people, everybody said, well, if you want to be happy and successful, pray to God. Just ask God for what you want, ask and you will receive, and God will give it to you. Well, I tried that, and I tried that really very seriously, but it never quite worked. I didn't really get the things that I asked for. It was like God wasn't listening. So after that, went down another track and I thought, well, the best way to be successful and happy is to get an education. So I went to university for 7 years and I studied music and I got a master's degree and I got all this knowledge. But what I noticed was, even though I had a lot more knowledge and had a lot more information, I wasn't any happier. I wasn't really any closer to that feeling of I'm really doing what I want to do with my life and everything is working well. And I looked around my teachers and the professors and other people, and they had a lot of knowledge as well, but they weren't any happier or more successful, it didn't seem to me, than anyone else either. So an uncle said to me, if you want to be happy and successful, you need to have your own business. Make a lot of money, and then you'll have the freedom to do what you want, and you can do anything. So I did all that, and I set up what was the first of about 18, at last count, 18 different businesses I've had through my multi-decade life. And what I noticed was, yes, I did make a lot of money, and yes, I was very successful, but I had a lot of stress and problems as well. And I never really got to that stage of feeling that I was really in control of my life and that I really was happy and excited. And, I was always dealing with stress and problems. And in fact, one of the other areas I studied was personal development, self-help, motivation, goal setting and spirituality. And honestly, I became an absolute junkie for seminars, books, courses, you name it. I did these things, even did a few firewalks in some seminars and went to America, went to other places. And I really studied all this stuff. I didn't just go to a seminar or read a book. I really applied what they said. And I'd walk around with cards in my pocket with my goals and listen to what in those days were tapes or recordings, changing your subconscious mind and rewiring your brain and changing your beliefs. And I did all of this and I had goals lists and I went to workshops on goal setting. And I thought I was an expert at all of this stuff. But as I say, I still had stress and problems. And I thought, I'd read in several places, and I started to believe that stress, problems, it's a natural part of success. It's the price that you pay. If you want to be successful and be different, you have to learn to overcome obstacles. And that's just part of it. Now, I subsequently found out that's not true. But anyway, what happened after that? Here I was, a multimillionaire, had several businesses, doing really well on the outside. Still all that stress, but I was dealing with it, managing it in the sense that I was thinking, well, this is just the way life is. So what's the next goal? What's the bigger goal? What's the new project? So this was how my life was in my mid-40s. And then virtually overnight, I lost everything. And I became pretty well homeless. I had to move in and sleep on the sofa. You call it a couch as well, I think, don't you? Yeah. I had to sleep on the couch in the living room of my elderly mother's small flat in north of Auckland. And this was really weird. And because a couple of questions kept coming to my mind as I was experiencing this. And, I was facing bankruptcy and I really had nothing. But two questions kept coming to my mind. And the first was, why has this happened to me? I mean, I've studied everything to do with goal setting, motivation, law of attraction, beliefs, rewiring your brain, NLP. This was not on my goals list. This shouldn't be happening. Why is it happening? And the second question I kept asking is, what am I going to do now? How do I get out of this? I have no clue. My goals don't work. I don't know anybody in this town. All of my businesses and everything had gone. What do I do? I just had no clue. So anyway, I got through that experience, as you do, and my life started to change. And obviously for the better, but in a different way to what it had been before. Because what I was noticing was I formed a new relationship. I set up a new business or a couple of new businesses. But what I noticed was before, everything had been a struggle. It was like I was continually chasing after success. I was always trying to figure out, what do I need to do to be more successful? What do I need to do to fix this problem? What do I need to do to be happy? How do I make more money? How do I create this ideal life? So I was struggling all the time, always trying to figure this out, trying to work really hard on it, on trying to get results. But what I noticed after this experience was my life was sort of unfolding in a way that it felt like success was coming after me. And I know that sounds really weird and a bit new agey. There's not really any other way to describe it because it was like things were just falling into place. There were things like coincidences or you might call luck. I remember I was being in a shop and somebody walked in who I hadn't seen for 25, 30 years. He recognized me and he said, "Hey, Liam, I've got an idea for a business that you could set up next to my business." Now, I had nothing, but all of the pieces just seemed to fall into place. So people helped me, came out of the blue and did things for me, and it all fell into place. So things were going really well. And what I was putting in effort, obviously, but there wasn't the struggle. And I remember thinking, I don't have the problems. I don't have the stress. I actually wake up in the morning excited about the day, looking forward to it. I don't go to bed at night worried about everything that's all my problems. I actually look back on the day and think, I had a really good day. But things were going well. It wasn't like I was just sitting in a corner and pretending things were going well. I wasn't being a hermit and convincing myself, oh, yes, life is wonderful and I'm doing nothing. I was doing great things. I was traveling. I mentioned to you just before we came on air that, I spent 8 years sailing around Europe on my own yacht. Where did all these things come from? I needed to find out. And the reason I needed to find out was I wanted to make sure it kept happening. I didn't want to mess it up. I thought, this is great. This is really good. I want to figure out what it is that I'm doing differently and keep doing it. And that really took me on a quest. I had all of this knowledge about everything from religion, spirituality, self-help, all of this stuff. I had a big library of books, which I lost, obviously. I had all this knowledge, but there was something I was missing. And it was that thing that I was missing that I went on to really start researching and find out. And that's really what I do now, is share with people what happened to me, what the missing link really is, and help them achieve their own transformation, which is really about being the best that you can be, living life at your highest potential, not with problems and stress, which they don't help you be the best that you can be. They just wear you down. So life's not meant to be about problems and stress. So that's what I do now.
Wow. I think everybody has a different idea of what problems and stress might be to them. So is there one sort of category that you would imagine, how would you advise someone to go from that problem and stress to finding their happiness?
Well, I think you need to dig a little bit deeper and say what causes problems and stress in life. And, the missing link, the thing that I really had overlooked, and it seems crazy that most of us have forgotten about this, but the reality is that we are overwhelmingly governed. Everything in our life is determined by nature. It's not about what we want, it's about what nature determines for us. So, for instance, you can say, I'm going to walk out a 10-story building and I'm going to go up in the air. Now, you can change your beliefs, you can pray, you can motivate yourself, you can do all of those things and rewire your brain, but you are governed by the law of gravity. You're going to walk off a 10-story building and you're going to fall down. That's it. Try and stop your heart from beating. Try and stop your breathing. You can't do it. So there's this natural world that we're a part of that governs our behavior and governs our results. And we need to understand what that is and work with it, work in the flow of nature rather than try and fight against it. And what I realized was, if you ask, because I started with the basics, and I said, all right, I don't know anything anymore. Who am I and why am I here? What's the reason for all of this? There have been thousands of books written on and try to explain who we are and why we're here. But there's one thing we can all agree, and that is we live in a biological body. We have a physical being. So we're part of a physical world. So the next question to ask is, well, what's the purpose of life? What is the purpose of life and our life? And all of science and all of biology will tell you there's only one purpose, one reason that life exists, and one goal and intention that all life is continually striving to achieve, and that is simply survival. All life is striving to survive, and that includes us. Our biological wiring continually is working to make sure that we survive. And of course, the best chance you have of surviving is the organism is at its best. And to use a little bit of biological terminology, biology has a word for this. It's called homeostasis. Homeostasis is the state where the organism functions perfectly on every level, which gives it the greatest chance for survival. And we know that when we're physically strong and also mentally and emotionally strong, we do have the greatest chance for survival. We overcome disease and infection, and also mentally and emotionally, we're more resourceful. So when you really think about it, if our purpose is to be the best that we can be biologically so that we have the greatest chance for survival, then a couple of questions come out of that. One is, why aren't we? Mm-hmm. And the second question is, so what has nature provided to make sure that that happens? Because nature hasn't given us this goal or this purpose without providing the tools and the machinery for that to happen. And every single organism, to answer the second question first, every single organism has a machine or a mechanical device that has the specific purpose of ensuring that that organism achieves homeostasis, being the best that it can be, so that it has the greatest chance for survival. And that thing is a brain. And that's the purpose of a brain. The sole purpose is to make sure you, or every organism that has it, make sure you're the best that you can be so that you have the greatest chance for survival. So then the question comes, so why am I not the best that I can be? And again, it's really simple when you start to think about it, because your brain is a machine. It's not a thinking, it doesn't operate by variables. It operates just as predictably as the law of gravity. It has a purpose. So like any machine, you think about your motor car, that has a purpose to get you from where you are to where you want to go. And it's going to do it predictably, reliably, efficiently. And if you're in it, it's designed to give you an enjoyable ride. But what happens if you don't use the machine the right way? You get problems. The engine doesn't start or doesn't go properly, or you have a rough ride, or whatever it is. So if you're driving that car, for instance, and you've got it in the wrong gear and you've got the wrong fuel and you don't know how to drive it, you're going to end up with problems. And everyone else driving every other car, they might not know how to drive it either, and they're all having problems. And so everybody's saying, well, this is the way driving a car is. Of course, your engine's going to blow up sometimes, but we've got mechanics here who can fix it for you and charge you money to make sure you fix it. Or the tires are going to wear out, or whatever's going to happen. That's just natural. But it's not natural. If you understand that's not natural, that's not the purpose of a motor car, it's just somebody's driving it wrong, you'd go, but hang on. If you didn't drive it the wrong way, you wouldn't have all those problems. It's not designed for that. And so really, on a logical level, that's the explanation for problems. It can simply only be, there's only one answer, and that is somehow we're not using this machine, our brain, the right way. And that's why problems show up.
This is brilliant and deep, and definitely left of field thinking that a lot of people, a lot of guests that we've had on the show have not spoken this way before. How does one identify that their machine is not working problem? Is it simply by noticing the problems? Is it noticing things aren't going their way? And how does one realign that machine?
Well, of course, it's like any machine, you have to understand how to use it. That's the whole basis of what I teach, is how to use your brain the right way. And I think the great thing about this, I'd spent years and no one talked to me about this sort of stuff. And yet I thought, this is so logical. This is so basic. Here we are all struggling. It's a bit like the car's not working, so someone wants to sell you a nice stereo system or some leather seats or some air conditioning to try and make things a bit more comfortable without dealing with the core issue, which is simply using this natural machine. And I think one of the things we've forgotten is just how powerful our brain actually is. We're not some weak thing. There have been books written on the power of the brain where people have got to the end of writing the book and that you could tell they're like, I still can't believe how amazing the brain is. I mean, our brain has the computing power of 500 trillion computer microprocessors. Now, if you knew that you had a computer that had the power of more power, your brain, your computer had more power than all the computers on the planet put together, and its sole job was to make you the best that you could be so that you have the greatest chance for survival, wouldn't you go, wow, why am I bothering with anything else? All I need to do is figure out how to really harness and use this machine the right way. That's all I do. So coming back to your question, if problems show up in your life, you have to look at it and the truth is, you'd have to say, there's something about the machine that I'm using the wrong way. That can be the only explanation. You don't say it's normal. It can't be normal. Even if it's normal for 99% of people. I was reading some research recently, and this writer had concluded, I can't quite remember who it was, he'd studied all of nature, the natural world, and you don't need to be a genius to figure this out either. You just need to go and look in nature, spend a few minutes looking at trees, looking at birds, looking at insects, looking at anything in nature. And what you conclude after about 30 seconds is everything is perfect. Everything is being the best that it can be. There's a tree. It's being what it is perfectly. And in fact, this researcher concluded that nature is 98% successful. In other words, 98% of nature is simply being the best that it can be, doing what it's designed to do, achieving homeostasis. There's 2% that aren't successful, and that's usually, trees planted in the wrong place, or a storm comes along, or there's a flood or a famine, and, there's a lack of food at some point. But nature's only 2% unsuccessful. But humans, the same person said, it's the other way around. We're 98% unsuccessful. 98% of people, if you were to ask them, they don't feel they're being the best they can be. They don't feel that they're living their highest potential. They're struggling with problems and they're not happy. So the only difference is how we've all got the same machine. We've got the same machine that nature has. We have other added components like awareness, and that's part of the problem. They're not designed to be the problem. They're designed to be part of helping us to be the best that we can be.
I know you talk about the 4 parts of the brain and how they work together to give us the results that we want in our life. Do you want to just share with us that part of it, the 4 parts of the brain?
Sure. Okay. Well, there are scientific models and all sorts of descriptions and fancy words for all of this, but I've created a model based on how things actually work that's fairly simple to understand. So, and I go into a lot more detail about understanding this in my coaching, but just to give you a brief overview, if you like, there are essentially 4 parts to your brain. Okay. Now, the first part is what I call your thinking brain, your rational brain. And this is held in it's also called scientifically your neocortex or your cerebrum, the top of your head, all this big stuff. Now, what that part of your brain essentially does is that it takes all of the information that is continually coming at you from your environment at every moment in your life. So through your 5 senses, everything you hear, smell, taste, touch, or see, what it does is it takes that information, it interprets it, and it stores it in this part of your brain. So your thinking rational brain is essentially like a database or a library, if you like, of all of your knowledge, everything you've learnt in your life, all of your experiences. And it's there so that you can identify and label things so you can understand what's going on, and you can also communicate with other people. This is where communication comes from as well. So that's your rational thinking brain. The second part of your brain is located just below your rational thinking brain in places called the amygdala and the hippocampus primarily. And this is your emotional brain. This is your feeling brain. This is the part that's responsible for giving you feelings, whether they be good, bad, happy, loving, sad, frustrated, whatever it is. This all comes from your emotional brain. The third part of your brain is what I call your survival brain. And this is at the back of your head. And this is responsible really for managing all of your survival mechanisms. So everything just to keep you alive that you're not thinking about, your breathing, your organs, all of your physical functions. And there's one other really important part of your survival that is handled by your survival brain, and that is your fight or flight response. Now, your fight or flight response is there for one purpose, and that is to protect you from an immediate threat in your environment. So, for instance, millions of years ago when the brain was created or whatever, you're walking along the forest, a lion is going to jump out. Well, you're going to react. It activates this flight response in your survival brain to get you to jump out of the way or run away or shout for help or stand and fight. It's a weapon, a mechanism, a tool to protect you in those rare cases that you are threatened with an immediate threat to your survival. Because, of course, these days it's not very often. I mean, we don't have lions around the corner all the time. Occasionally a car, maybe once in your lifetime, you might be in the path of a car, so you jump out of the way, or somebody might want to hit you, so you protect yourself. But we don't need to use this very often anymore. But the fourth part of so that's your survival brain. And the fourth part of your brain, remember our biological purpose is to be the best that we can be so that we have the greatest chance for survival. Now, the part of the brain that overwhelmingly manages that to make sure that you are the best that you can be is located just below your emotional feeling brain, and it's what I call your creative brain. Now, in your creative brain, this has all of the tools and resources that you need for you to be the best that you can be. So it has your imagination, your awareness, your creativity, your resourcefulness. It's where you get those gut feelings. So it contains new information and new ideas, the right ideas. So, when you go, well, that feels right, or that doesn't feel right, or maybe I shouldn't do that. Oh, I know I should do that. It doesn't come from your thinking logical brain. You're not sitting down and working it out. You just know that this is the right thing. So you meet somebody and you go, I'm going to marry that person. And it happens. You just know it. Now, this part of your brain, your creative brain, it also, remember we're talking about a 500 trillion computer microprocessor machine here. And what we call luck and coincidence comes from a very limited part of awareness. But when you use your creative brain, you realize that your brain has the ability to bring to you what you need for you to be your best. It can literally manage your environment for you. So you might call it luck and coincidence, but it's your creative brain at work. And also, the really important thing to realize, and this is why people use their brain the wrong way, this is your problem-solving part of your brain. This is where you get the answers to problems, the real answers. But here's where people go wrong, is the only way you can access that creative part of your brain, which you're supposed to use all the time. There's only one time you're not supposed to use it. Guess when? When a lion comes running out at you.
Fight or flight.
And what happens is your fight or flight is activated, and in that moment, your creative brain is shut down. And it's shut down for a purpose, because you don't need the resources that are in your creative brain to fight off the lion. You need to react. You don't need to appreciate. You don't need to analyze or be aware of everything that's good. Your brain on a biological level diverts all of the energy from any other part of your body that's not necessary to fight off that lion. It brings all that energy into that action, because you're going to need that energy. You might need more energy than you've possibly ever used before to survive in that situation. So it shuts down all of the energy of your creative brain. So the real question is, okay, so what determines whether I'm using my fight or flight or my creative brain? Because most of the time you want to be using your creative brain, and only that once in your lifetime, when a car's rushing at you, when you've got a real threat, do you want to shut that down and divert the energy momentarily to reacting and getting rid of that danger? What activates these two parts of the brain is your feelings. So when you feel happy, creative, all those good things, loving, you're working with your creative brain. But as soon as you feel fear, anxiety, stress, worry, anger, that's a signal from your brain, messed up as it is, that you're facing an immediate threat to your survival. So fear and all those negative emotions literally activate your fight-flight mechanism, and they shut down your creative brain. Now you can see what the problem is. Everybody's out there stressed, frustrated, worried, trying to manage their life from that state. They don't have all the right answers. They don't have the awareness, the imagination to see the big picture. And one of the reasons we know this, have you ever had a friend where they're all stressed about a problem? Maybe their relationship's not going well. And they go, or their job, they're in a job, I'm really struggling in my job. And you say, look, you're in the wrong job. Quit, give up, go get another one. You can see so clearly what the solution to their problem is. They're just in the wrong job or even in the wrong relationship, but they can't see it. And they say to you, oh no, I've put so much energy into this and I can make it work, and I just need to work harder and I need to figure it out, and it's all my fault. They're really good people and I've put so much into this, I can't give up now. They can't see it. And that's why they stay stuck. But you can see it. Now imagine if you could see that for yourself about your own life, your own problems, your own situation, what you should really do about them. The right answer. That's what you do when you can learn to use your creative brain rather than your survival brain to manage your life. And you can only do that when you work on what's causing you to feel bad, what's causing you to feel fear, and get rid of that out of your life. And it could be your thoughts, your beliefs, your whatever it is. It's also your stimulation, your input, who you're talking to, what are you watching? Is it making you feel good or bad? If it's making you feel bad, you're finished. You're activating the wrong part of your brain and you're going to stay stuck.
This is powerful. Why do you say, and I find this one really interesting, that setting goals is an unnatural and sabotage to people's success? Is it because they're in their stressful zone when we set a goal?
There's two types of goals. There's what I call knowing goals and wishing goals. Mm-hmm. And this is a bit of a simplification. But remember I mentioned before about when you meet somebody, you go, I'm going to marry that person. Or you walk into a house and you go, I'm going to buy this, or I'm going to get this job. You have no proof that's going to happen. Maybe the house is far out of your league. The man might be out of your league as well, but you just know. That's a knowing goal, and that comes from your creative brain. But you can't force those. You can't manufacture those. They are your creative brain saying to you, when you need a goal, when you need something to work towards that's going to help you be the best that you can be, I'll show it to you. And I will do everything that needs to happen, obviously in conjunction with your effort, to make sure that you achieve that goal. And you achieve those goals. Things fall into place, they happen. But the wishing and hoping goals are the ones that people never achieve. And, research is coming out. And if you ask someone really honestly, one of these success gurus, what percentage of people's goals are ever achieved? The truth is, I ask people this all the time who I work with, you set goals, what percentage of your goals do you achieve? Is it 100%, 95%, 90%? And they shake their head and I say, well, 50%? And you keep going and it's about 2%. Now, why are we all doing something that has a 2% success rate? We're doing it for the same reason we do everything, because everyone else is doing it. Most people are doing what they're doing because everyone else is doing it. The reality is, if you dig just a little bit deeper into all of these things that we've been told are the truth, you realize they're not true. Most people don't achieve their goals. And if we're really honest with ourselves, and I was really honest with myself when I used to be a goal setter, that was true for me as well. Despite all the seminars and all the books and all the maps and pictures and everything else I had about my goals, I hardly ever did achieve them. And you've hit on the reason why, because most of the time you're trying to set a goal from this limited part of your brain. Remember, your fight-flight mechanism, it has no awareness. It doesn't know what you want. It doesn't know what's best for you. All it knows is how to react in a situation. But if you ask it, what do I need to have in my life? What should my goals be? It's going to be like the warrior, teenage warrior who's good at fighting, but he doesn't know the answer. And he'll say to you, I don't know. But if you keep asking, you'll go, well, hang on, I'll have a look in the rational thinking brain, because I read somewhere that if you're rich, you'll be happy. So have a goal to be rich. Okay, now leave me alone. So you go, okay, my goal is to make $1 million or whatever it is. So you're just using the part of your brain that doesn't know. But there's another reason why goal setting doesn't work. This is again to do with biology. The way all of nature works, including you biologically, is through another law, which is efficiency and conservation of energy. So what that means is your body and all natural things are continually working to use the minimum amount of energy to get the maximum amount of result. Now, this makes sense from a survival point of view because you need energy reserves. There's no point using up all of your energy when there mightn't be any food around for the next 6 months or whatever it is. So you need to conserve energy. And one of the ways your brain conserves energy, because your brain uses more energy than any other organ in your body, uses about 30% of all your energy is your brain. So one of the ways it conserves energy is in the way when you're using your creative brain, it shows you how to live your life and it shows you one step at a time. It shows you the next step. When you tap into this, it will always show you the next step. Now, why doesn't it show you the next 20 steps? Or why doesn't it show you the goal? Because that's inefficient. You'd be questioning it, be going, well, hang on, you're saying my ideal goal is something that I really going to be what's going to make me supremely happy in my life. It's something I've never thought of, never heard of. It sounds completely crazy to me. And you're telling me these are some of the steps. You're going to waste all that energy analyzing, disagreeing, trying to figure it out, trying to think whether that's right or not, rather than just do what you need to do, which is the next step, because it's only by doing the next step that you're going to get there anyway. I mean, sailing around on a yacht or living in a motorhome in the middle of Spain where I am at the moment, that was never on a goals list for me. And my creative brain said, I can't put it on a goals list because if you thought that that's where you're going to end up, you'd say that's absolutely crazy. Forget that. And I'm not going to take the next step. Can I just mention, I know I'm raving on a bit here, but a lot of people follow, as I did, the religion and the Bible. And I really studied the Bible. When I started into how the brain works and how we're biologically designed, one thing I noticed was, I've heard this before. This is in the Bible. And it turns out the Bible is probably the best manual, user instruction manual on how to use your brain that exists. Because it says a couple of interesting things. Firstly, when it comes to goals, it says in the Bible, give no thought for tomorrow. Tomorrow will take care of itself. Do not worry what you shall eat, drink, or wear. They'll all be provided for you, just like they're provided by the rest of nature. Birds aren't out there struggling to find food. They just find food. If you look at a bird, it just eats food when it needs it. And the second thing the Bible says, and it says this more than 360 times, 3 words, be not afraid. Now, it's not a suggestion, try not to worry so much. Be not afraid. Because when you're afraid, you activate the wrong part of your brain and you block this natural creative brain that's designed to keep you in the flow of life, moving along with the least resistance. Remember, resistance isn't natural as well. When you resist something, it slows you down. Least resistance, most efficient energy for you to be the best that you can be. Be not afraid. Fear is your enemy. It's your only enemy. When you feel bad, oops, activated the wrong part of my brain, which for some reason my brain is thinking there's a threat to my survival when there isn't. I need to get to deal with that so that I operate through my creative brain and allow, in religion, they would say, allow God to work through you.
This is brilliant. I've got my mind is just like, with this. It's so great. And you know what? It's so true, because be not afraid. It's not a suggestion. It's actually like a command, an instruction. So that's powerful.
The thing that is what really coming to my mind right now is that having gone through this whole thinking, this new way of thinking that you came across, do you feel that this has given you a new lease of life, or like a new view on how you looked at things before, like the Bible, or different things that you've seen? Has it sort of given you a new lease or a new appreciation for those things?
Well, absolutely, because so many of the pieces of the puzzle, I've been trying to put it all together for decades, and suddenly it all came together, and I thought, this makes sense. And when you realize that, the great thing is, many people talk about, but very few people do, you actually let go. You stop trying to control. What I teach now is let yourself off the hook. You let yourself off the hook. You stop trying to force your life to happen, because when you do, instead, you allow this natural creative energy that is you. You allow that to flow through you. And when you do, this different part of your brain takes control and it leads you down the right path. Now, some people call that faith, but the problem with faith is, how do you believe something if you don't understand it? We actually live mainly on faith. I mean, we drive a car down the road and you expect that cars coming the other way are going to stay out of your way. They're going to stay on their side and you're going to stay on your side. Is that faith? You believe that the sun's going to rise tomorrow. You believe you're going to keep breathing and your heart's going to keep beating. That's not really faith, is it? What it is, why do you believe that? Why don't you worry about those things? Because you know that's just the way it works. This is what happens. This is the natural flow of things. You don't need to worry about it. So it's the same. When you start to understand how your brain works, it's not a question of faith. It's a question of, well, that's just the way it works. All I need to do is focus on how I'm feeling, in essence, and identifying those things and working on eliminating those things that are making me feel bad, that are knocking me off track. And I know the right thing's going to happen. And the miracles, if you like, that have happened for me and happened for many people that I've shared this information for, when you start doing this, you just step back and you say, this is crazy, until you realize this is the way it's supposed to work. It's only when we're in this fearful, stress state that we think we've got to control things. Remember, your survival brain, it needs to be in control. It needs to know that you're safe. One of the things that it does is it blocks out your awareness of anything good. Because if you think about it, if a lion is attacking you, you don't want your brain looking at the nice trees and flowers, and you've got to be totally focused on every single danger that's not only there, but could be there. Is there a snake in the grass? What's that sound? You're on super alert for anything that could be or is a danger. And we see that all the time. People have this negative attitude towards life, don't they? They see all the problems in the world. They see all the problems, quote unquote, in their life. That's what they're focused on. And it's not because they want to. It's because that's all their brain is allowing them to see. Because that's what's designed to do, is to find all the problems and fix them all of the dangers, all of the threats. We've got to eliminate them so that you're going to be safe, so you can get back to living your true life. So if you're continually presenting a life where you're going to see problems and stress and danger all the time, you'll never get out of that. You'll never get out of that state. And you're certainly not going to be able to set the right goals, do the right things. You know, how many times do we, when we're stressed, we do the wrong thing? I used to do this all the time, make so many mistakes in my business and personal life. I go, why did I do that? Why did I employ that person or get in a relationship with that person? Why did I say that? It's crazy, but it's because you're using a survival brain which can only react. That's all it does. It has no intelligence, if you like, no awareness.
Brilliant.
There's two questions that we do like to ask, Liam. And one of those at the end of our podcast is, what advice would you give to someone who wanted to start to rewrite their life story today?
Well, are you talking about their past or their future life story? Well, I think your past, just a simple thing, is look back on everything in your life and say, what was the gift in that? What's great about that? Because it's just perspective. Wow. You know, when I was homeless, it was awful at the time. I look back on it, it's the best thing that ever happened to me. I'm so grateful for all of the people who caused me all of the stress and all the problems, what they taught me. I wouldn't know any of this stuff. I wouldn't have gone down this other track. I'd still be on that path of trying to set more goals and getting stressed and getting richer and losing some here and making some there. I'd still be on that track. So it's a great gift. So anytime you think that something should have been different in your past to what it was, think, where's the gift there? Where's the benefit? How has that helped me? How can I see that it's part of the perfection of my life that has got me to where I am now that I can use to my benefit? And when it comes to the future, I think all you need to do is say, I'll let my creative brain write the story. I'll just take the next step. What is the next step? What's the next thing I need to do? Don't have any expectation on outcomes, because sometimes your creative brain will say, well, I've got a bigger project I'll share with you here, but otherwise I'm just going to show you one step at a time. You've got to trust me. You've got to know that's the way it works. You can't figure it out.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I love that. Don't have any expectation on outcomes. That's powerful.
I know. It's like what you say, don't marry the process and divorce
the results,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we're here to enjoy life. Musicians, artists, high performance people, they often talk about this state of being in the zone, being in the flow. And it's like musicians or composers, they say, I just heard the music and I wrote it down. I don't know where it came from. So there's this other place, this other part of intelligence that you have access to, that not only you have access to, it's designed that you're meant to manage and use. You have access, but you can't force that. Yeah. But it's there for you as well. And that's why just let yourself off the hook. Just realize there's a different part of your brain. And all you really need to do is manage and say, am I using my survival, fight or flight brain? In which case, that's not going to be helpful. Is there a threat to my survival right here, right now? Well, if not, there's something I'm using the machine the wrong way. And instead am I using, and get into this creative state as often as you can. And of course, it's not necessarily simple. This is why I teach a whole coaching program on that I have this process called brain rebalancing, which is about how to get those four parts of your brain and primarily your creative brain operating the way it should. But so there's a bit to it, but it really comes down to starting on a new track, starting a different habit, starting to become aware of how you're feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. That's just perfect, Liam. And if you could go back right now and rewrite your life story, what would that look like?
Exactly what it is. I've had the most amazing life. I've been homeless. I've been sick with illnesses. I've done all these, what everyone else has done. It's been amazing.
Love it. Thank you so much, Liam.
Liam, thank you for joining our podcast tonight and being on our show. And if you want to know more about Liam and his work and also how you can reboot and restart get access to those 4 areas and do his program, his link and his bios and his social handles are all going to be on tonight's episode in the show notes. So make sure you check them out. Again, Liam, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been great to meet you and hope you stay in touch.
Now that we've interviewed our guest, join Charlene and I as we recap today's episode. Charlene, I just love that episode. Like, how many light bulb moments did you have? Like, that makes sense.
Oh my gosh, Stephen. Like, even though he came from that religious background and he kind of veered away from it, it's coming back to look at it in a different light. Yeah. And looking at, the Bible is not just a thing of religion, but it's also an instruction manual for how we use our brain. And it's so true. There's so many places in the Bible that talks about do not fear.
Yeah, and fear is the enemy. And there's so many things. I don't have expectation on anything.
Yeah.
I really think that just sets people free. And his whole thing about let yourself off the hook. Can you imagine doing stuff without striving and just allowing it? And, we talk about the law of attraction. We talk about this, and it's all got to do with trusting the process and just taking one step in the way. I'm definitely Liam has a free course on his website. Check it out. I'm actually going to do that free course, and I'll probably do some videos around that free course as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening to our podcast today. We hope you found it informative and inspiring. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and share it with your friends and family. Also, make sure to visit our website at www.rewriteyourlifestory.com.au to learn more about our mission, products and services. And remember, you have the power to rewrite your own life story. So go out there, face your challenges head on, and create the life you've always wanted. We'll see you in the next episode.